Hey everyone, welcome back to Kubrick Corner with me, Sean Wilson. So there's a new movie out this week, and it's the directorial debut of one Paul Dano, a scene-stealing character actor from the likes of Little Miss Sunshine and 12 Years a Slave, who has made an extraordinary leap behind the camera with his new film Wildlife, which is adapted from the Richard Ford novel. I have to say, with real tact and real sensitivity. Dano has worked with Zoe Kazan to bring this story to the screen. And I have to say, he's done a really, really good job with this. I saw this film several weeks ago, quite a while ago now, actually, at a preview screening, and it's really stuck with me since. And it could potentially be in line for Oscar buzz. So as I said, it's adapted from Richard Ford's novel about essentially a disintegrating suburban family. It's set in the 1960s in small town America, which immediately seduces me. I love all that kind of old school Americana, all the old cars, like American suburbia, in which you get that kind of outwards outward facade of calm, yet inwardly everyone's kind of raging and angry. I love all that kind of stuff, and this very much plays into that. So Carey Mulligan and Jake Gyllenhaal are the husband and wife who have a teenage son played by Ed Oxenbould. They've moved to a new town, but the husband is undergoing something of an identity crisis. It's almost like he doesn't want his male pride wounded. He wants to prove himself as a man, and then frictions within the family occur when he decides to go off and fight these wildfires. They're living in Montana, and these wildfires are sort of engulfing the area around the town, and the conflagration, the literal conflagration, mirrors the kind of the burning, fiery nature of what's going on between the three central characters. So as Jake Gyllenhaal's character goes away and basically becomes an absent presence, you've got Carey Mulligan as the mother, who is basically left at home as this increasingly and incredibly embittered and angry individual who is sort of forced to basically ruminate not just on her own life and the state of where she's got to as a woman, but also the nature of what 1960s society imposes on the role of women. Is it necessarily correct that women are left to pick up the pieces while the husbands go off and do the macho thing elsewhere? And she comes to reflect on, in an increasingly angry way, it has to be said, about the nature of what her life used to be like before she got settled down and before she got married. And the key to all of this is that it plays out through the eyes of the Ed Oxenbould character, who is himself on the cusp of adulthood, but he's on the wrong side of adulthood. He is still, at least at the start of the movie, too young to really understand the complexities of what's going on. He is aware that something transformative is happening within his family, but he really doesn't have the maturity to be able to stop it or to be able to engage with it. He is really more of a passive observer, and it's through his eyes, as per the book, which I've read and is really, really good. It's through his eyes that we see this bonfire of the vanities really taking shape in front of our eyes, and the movie subsequently has a tragic overtone to it, in spite of the sort of luscious cinematography and the luscious design that really does drink in all those lovely 1960s period details. It is a movie about people who are imploding emotionally and psychologically, and the performances are absolutely superb. I mean, I really do think that Carey Mulligan gives a career best here, and I think she will be recognised at the Oscars. If this movie picks up any traction with the Oscars, I think she'll be recognised. Of course, as we all know, movies gain traction at the Oscars when the PR team and the publicists really get behind the movie and really sort of drum up lots of attention. That's what gets movies Oscar buzz. But I really hope that happens with Carey Mulligan's performance in this film, because she's given a host of terrific performances. Before you think of things like an Education, Drive, Never Let Me Go, which I think Never Let Me Go is an extraordinary film, really underrated, and she's really extraordinary in it. She is really, really good in this, as this increasingly embattled and embittered presence who comes to basically question her very existence in life, and she's at a crossroads in her life and she doesn't quite know exactly where to proceed. And as the film goes on, she takes up with an older man, and again her son kind of looks on in kind of abject despair, unable to sort of prevent anything that's happening. It's really, really good. And Jake Gyllenhaal similarly adds to a roster of increasingly complex and really great performances over the last few years. I mean, we've seen him in the likes of Nightcrawler just recently, and now he adds to another very, very complicated human portrayal of a very decent, loving father who wants to do the best for his son, but who finds himself at an impasse with his own wife, and then he really can't. He almost can't confront that head on, so he goes off to fight these wildfires as if to sort of justify himself. And Gyllenhaal is really, really good, and Ed Oxenbould is really heartbreaking as the young teenager through whose eyes this plays out. Ed Oxenbould probably best known from the M. Night Shyamalan movie The Visit. He's really, really good here, and I think he'll become a major star. And then behind the camera, Paul Dano. I mean, wow! I mean, Paul Dano has really carved out a role of playing like real like miscreants and creeps, and very often not altogether sympathetic characters. He's often got a reputation playing quite snivelling, like nasty characters, but he displays an extraordinarily acute sensitivity here. He clearly cares very deeply about the story. It's very faithful to the original story. It doesn't deviate from it, which I suppose to some extent can give it a kind of suffocating feel at times. There is occasionally a kind of airless quality to me. There's a kind of almost too much of a pristine nature to the cinematography and to the way that the movie plays out. I mean, certainly if you want a domestic drama that is kind of raw and edgy, I mean, the performances are raw, but the actual composition of the movie is very, very composed. And I dare say there will be some people who want the movie to come out maybe punching and fighting a little bit more. It doesn't do that, but I think that's a deliberate stylistic decision, because what it's doing is it's offsetting the inferno within the characters against this very outwardly composed like 1960s Montana suburbia, and I think it does it very, very well. I think it's a very, very impressive movie. It doesn't seem to have being flagged up as an Oscars contender so far. I really think it ought to be. Again, it's going up against some very, very hefty competition like A Star Is Born and First Man. I think it really does deserve to stand up there with them. It's getting a fairly limited release. If you are lucky enough to go and see it on the big screen, I would recommend you do. It's called Wildlife. It's directed by Paul Dano. If you do go and see it, drop me a comment here at Kubrick Corner, and I'll see you soon. Bye.